The chamber was restless that afternoon. Senators whispered in corners, aides shuffled papers, and the usual chatter of politics filled the air. It was supposed to be just another speech, another long lecture that would be forgotten before the day ended. But when Senator John Kennedy rose to speak, something about his presence shifted the atmosphere. He didn't hold notes. He didn't glance at a teleprompter. He simply stood there, hands resting on the podium, and for a moment, the entire room went quiet, though no one knew why. Then he began. He didn't start with statistics or policy jargon. He didn't even mention politics. Instead, Kennedy opened with a story. "When I was 10 years old," he said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that made people lean in. "I was sitting on the front porch of our little house in Louisiana, waiting for my father to come home. He'd been gone for 3 days working long hours, trying to provide for us. I remember holding my school report card in my hands, waiting to show it to him, hoping he'd be proud. But when he came home, tired and worn, he barely looked at me. He just said, 'We'll talk later.' And I remember, later never really came." The room froze. Kennedy's voice didn't tremble, but the memory carried pain. He went on, speaking not as a politician, but as a son. He spoke of how many children in America grow up chasing the attention of a father who is absent not always because he wants to be, but because the world pulls him away. Some fathers leave by choice. Some leave because work consumes them. Others never learned how to be present because their own fathers hadn't been there. And then Kennedy shifted. "Now I stand here," he said, "not just as a senator, but as a father myself. And I have to ask, what will my children remember of me? Will they remember the speeches, the votes, the policies? Or will they remember whether I sat with them on the porch when they needed me? Will they remember whether I listened?" The chamber was silent. Even the staffers who normally scrolled through phones or quietly exchanged notes stopped. Kennedy's words were no longer about him. They were about America. He reminded Congress that fatherhood wasn't a private issue. It was a national one. "If we want to fix our schools," he said, "if we want to heal our communities, if we want to end the cycles of crime and poverty, we must first heal the home. And that begins with fathers." He told the story of a young boy he had met in his district, boy barely 13, who had been arrested for stealing food. Kennedy had gone to visit him, expecting to lecture him. But when he asked the boy why he had done it, the boy didn't talk about hunger. He didn't talk about money. He just whispered, "I just wanted somebody to notice me." Kennedy paused. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. That boy didn't need punishment. He needed a father. The room remained hushed. He didn't stop there. He spoke of veterans he had met who came home from war only to feel like strangers in their own homes. He spoke of young men who had become fathers before they knew how to be men. He spoke of broken homes where mothers bore burdens too heavy to carry alone. And with each story, Kennedy's voice carried not judgment, but compassion. Then came the moment that stilled even the most hardened faces in the room. "My father wasn't perfect," he admitted. "He failed me in ways I swore I would never repeat." But one night, years later, when I was already a grown man, he sat me down. He didn't say much. He just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Son, I should have been there more. I should have tried harder. I want you to be better than I was." That was the first time I saw him cry. And those tears taught me more about fatherhood than any book or speech ever could. The chamber grew heavy with silence. Some senators shifted in their seats, blinking hard. A few, who were fathers themselves, lowered their heads. Kennedy didn't lecture Congress about passing a new law that day. Instead, he issued a challenge. "I ask you all, not as Republicans or Democrats, not as lawmakers, but as fathers, as mothers, as sons, as daughters, ask yourself what kind of legacy you're leaving at home. Because one day, when all of this He gestured to the grand walls of Congress, is gone. The only thing that will matter is what your children remember about you. Will they remember love, or will they remember absence? When Kennedy finished, he didn't wait for applause. He simply stepped back from the podium and sat down. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence in the chamber was louder than any standing ovation could have been. It was the kind of silence that meant people were thinking not about politics, but about their own lives, their own families, their own children. Later, reporters would write that it was one of the rare moments when Congress forgot about partisanship. That night, many lawmakers went home and picked up the phone. Some called their children just to say, "I love you." Others sat down for dinner with their families for the first time in weeks. And long after the news cycle moved on, people remembered that day not because a bill was passed or a debate was won, but because a senator named Kennedy reminded them of something more important than politics: the power of fatherhood, the gift of presence, and the truth that sometimes the strongest speeches are not about government at all, but about the human heart.